Before we get into today's podcast, I wanted to tell you guys about PicDrop. PicDrop is an image transfer tool I've been using personally for over 5 years now. It's how I send all my photos to my clients, and I can create custom galleries online, which I can access on my laptop, mobile phone, on the go, where I can download files. It's just a really intuitive platform that was actually designed by photographers with photographers in mind. So they really understand what photographers need when they're delivering photos to clients. And they're constantly updating the platform with new tools and things you can use to just kind of streamline your workflow and make it easier when sending your photos to clients. They have a cool new scribble tool. So if you're working with a retoucher or a client, they can make notes on your photos and really just make it easy to communicate with your client and keep everything in one spot. I can't recommend it enough. It's just, for me, it's a lot better than some of the more outdated platforms like WeTransfer and Dropbox. It's just a very specific transfer tool for photographers in mind. So with today's podcast, with the promo code BANTER, you'll get 2 months free of PicDrop. All you got to do is go over to picdrop.com, enter the promo code BANTER, and you'll get 2 months free. So definitely go give it a try. Let me know what you guys think. And without further ado, we'll get into today's episode. Before we get into today's episode, just want to mention, if you're not already subscribed, if you could go over to the Photo Banter YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, it'd be much appreciated. I'm going to be uploading more video content as well as the video podcast every week, so definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. So just go over there, hit subscribe at the Photo Banter YouTube channel, and it'd be much appreciated. Welcome back to the Photo Banter podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gagne. And on today's episode, I welcome on Tim Ryugo. Tim has worked for Kodak for over 45 years. In this interview, I speak to Tim about his early days in photography and his journey to working with Kodak. He's worked as a sales representative, sales manager, has just kind of overseen the sales and marketing of Kodak film in the entire United States as well as Canada for over 45 years. So it was a really interesting conversation to kind of hear about the early days of working for Kodak and this kind of the evolution of the company and everything he's done. Tim's a really a big part of the film community. He's given away so much film to photographers over the years and is just a real fan of photographers and photography. So I was really excited to get him on the podcast to kind of hear about his journey with such an iconic company like Kodak. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and thanks so much for listening. All right, Tim Ryugo, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. Our mutual friend, Stefan Vanasco, he's been telling me for a long time how much he respects you. And he's like, you got to get Tim on the podcast. You got to get Tim on the podcast. So excited to have you, Tim, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. It's really, a pleasure and honor. Really humbled by this fact. So this is a first. So I tried to comb my hair and
No, it's just photo talk here. Stefan told me to ask you the first question.
yeah.
He said, Tim, how does it feel to know that there's a spot already available for you in heaven for all the film that you've given away to so many people? uh,
I probably should have started years ago. If I would have started years ago to ask people to follow me for every roll of film, if I gave them the film, would you follow me? Then I'd probably have, a million plus followers because I'd always be at all the trade shows and be giving film to the wedding photographers, um, anybody that, retirees, students. So, so definitely, I'm really, pleased to have been able to give so much film out. Uh,
yes, it seems like being a part of the community, photographers, is like something that you get a lot of joy from. And you're following your Instagram and stuff, seeing all you're going to like photo walks and like conferences
yeah,
and this kind of out there in community. Is that like one of your favorite parts of your job, pretty much?
that is really where my job, meets the road. Is that just the fact that I'm allowed to, manage this business and do the walks. It's really, I have to say, a passion of mine because I started my photography journey 52 years ago as a yearbook photographer, and so to have this job with Kodak for 46 years, is just the dream job. You wouldn't imagine how many people DM me and says, uh, you know, how do I get your job?
Yeah, yeah, you've gotten to do some amazing stuff, and I mean, yeah, you've been in the business a lot longer than me, but does it seem like the film community now, like we're talking about the photo walks and the community aspect, it's I came up in film, like I started shooting in the 90s or
Huh?
in early 2000s, so film was that's how I started, but now it seems like it's more of a community, and it's like this thing where people kind of get together and share that love. Do you feel like that's different than it was like back in the day, like in the 80s and like 70s when you kind of started a little bit?
Oh yeah, I mean the photo walks per se were photo walks with professionals. I
Hmm.
remember the first photo walk. It was organized by the Professional Photographers of America, and there was an organizer, and everybody that was on that walk was like a wedding photographer or they were in the business. Today, it's more of an inclusive community that reaches out, and anybody that's interested in photography in it uh, could join along. And really, when I think about the things that I do, for the most part, if they were to date stamp it, it's all on the weekends. The Leica events, they're like on a Thursday night. The photo walks and the get-togethers and meetups are on a Saturday or Sunday. So those are things that that I've just really enjoyed being a part of the community and meeting new people. And that's really one of the joys that it just I wanted to be, and I've always wanted to be an approachable representative uh, for Kodak film, so that if people had questions, that I'd be available to answer those.
Yeah, I think I saw another interview you did. There was like you took like a class with like a Nikon, it was like a Nikon class or something, and you said the rep was very approachable to you, and that's kind of was somewhat your inspiration to how you kind of approached your job and your career over the years.
Oh, very much so, because over the years, I've become that guy, and so when somebody said, "Oh, hey, are you Tim?" Um, you know, hey, it's nice to meet you, and can you answer my question? Same thing that if someone is very knowledgeable, sometimes you're kind of shy to ask any of those questions, and when you find out that they're just a plain old human being like yourself and willing to chat, that means a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It's really important. And I remember when I first started getting into photography, like going to my first like real camera shop, I was like intimidated because it's
Hmm.
like you
Hmm.
don't even know what you're looking for. You don't know the right questions. You don't want to sound like an idiot. So to have like someone who's approachable, like for me in Boston, there was Calumet used to be around back in the day, and there was a guy
Right.
who worked there, Jim, and I was
Hmm.
probably going in there as a teenager, and he knew I was trying to figure it out, and he helped me out a lot. So having the people like you and other people who are approachable for definitely for people just kind of get into it is like a big help, I think.
Right, right. It definitely is helpful to have someone that's not um well so knowledgeable that they talk past you and you go,
Yeah.
"Ooh," what?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of the, especially in the gear world and stuff, like know-it-alls or whatever. But yeah. But I guess to go back, man, like where did you grow up and like how did you kind of initially discover photography?
Yeah, I definitely grew up in Sacramento, California. Um, and I think that a friend of mine was the yearbook editor, and then there were another friend was the yearbook photography editor, and they didn't have a photographer, and they said, "Hey Tim, do you want to be our photographer?" And so in September of '72 is when I started that journey, and they gave me a Yashica Mat TLR, and gave me a camera and said, "Oh, go practice with this," and that was the start of my photography career. The What advanced it is my dad had gone to Japan, and he brought with my mom and brought back a Canon FTB with three lenses, and I borrowed it for an assignment, and then I don't think he ever got it back.
Do you still got it?
No, you know, I don't have it. It wore out actually, and after it wore out, I think I ended up getting a Canon F1 to replace it, and then my dad got a Canon A1 for himself that I never was able to touch.
I found some of your first
Oh,
pictures here. I'll pull them up here.
yeah, that was my first assignment practicing with that with that uh, for yearbook. They said go out and do a photo shoot. And so the interesting story on this, if you go to 1979, that jet actually failed to take off. At the end of the air show, it was going to be this finale where it would take off and do tricks. Well, it didn't take it. I had left early, and I saw this jet starting to take off, but it never got elevation. And so it ended up flying through a the street and ran into a Farrell's ice cream parlor in the day. So that was, you know, a tough story. The
I think like 22 people died, right?
yeah, it was just amazing. And I didn't, you know, if I was like really into photography, I probably would have, you know, gone to the scene to take pictures. But when you saw that big fire plume, I knew something bad was happening, and I just, you know, stood by the phone booth where I called my dad to pick me up. But you know,
What do you think initially attracted you to photography? What do you kind of enjoy about it initially when you kind of picked up a camera?
you know, the amazing thing, the magic about photography and film that is still relevant today is just the magic of taking clicking that shutter and not knowing what the heck you're gonna get. And it's nerve-wracking in the beginning, but just when you're taking that photo, you're processing it, and then you finally see that magical print come out in that developer in the darkroom. You kind of go, how is that? And of course, your first print, my first print was like terrible. I mean, it was, you know, either too light or too dark. But the guy that was training me, he put his negative in the enlarger. He goes, "This is what you do," and you know, he put it in the developer, and his was perfect. Mine was like, "Well, how'd you do that?" Well, you know, you know, and of course he had been doing it for years, so you know he had an idea of what exposure should be, and he just let me guess, and I guessed badly.
Yeah, you gotta learn all the steps. And you're doing your test strips and all that, and test printing and all that. But was like photography where you just kind of learned it in high school? Did you
Yes.
go? Okay. Did you ever?
Oh,
What were you gonna say?
oh, so high school is where I learned for the most part. And then I joined, in those days, there was part of the Boy Scouts, there were Explorer Scouts. And so there was a camera store that sponsored a Explorer post, photography Explorer post. And I was able to join that group. And that photography store had a dark room. And so that's really where I learned most of my darkroom technique is there. And then finally, Sacramento City College. Most city colleges in the day had an incredible vocational program,
Mm,
still do.
yeah.
Um, and so Sacramento City College had a an amazing 2 year program, and I basically took every class during the 2 years that I went to the city college there in Sacramento, and that's where I learned, you know, quite a bit of equipment
What
or techniques.
what kind of stuff did you enjoy photographing when you first got into it? I know you started doing the yearbook stuff, and we kind of looked at some of the air show stuff you we showed. But what kind of stuff did you kind of initially like photographing?
Well, mostly it was I want to say people and places, not too much things. And my brother was a gymnast in college. He's about 6 years older than me. So so then I got an interest in gymnastics as well. And so I oh my so my business card at the time said Tim Ryugo, specializing in sports action photos. So, and it's because I had taken so many photos of
Got you
of
here.
athletes. Well, in this, my brother happened to take this photo of me uh, doing gymnastics, and that I not only took photography at City College, but I competed in gymnastics as well.
That's amazing. And then I think these are some of your shots, right?
Yeah, that's Olga Korbut, Russian gymnast. The story of my ability to get into these, and that's Nadia Comaneci.
Mm.
Um, the story of my ability to get into these gymnastic events is that my classmate was a newscaster, and when I had heard that the U.S. was going to have an exhibition with the Russians or the Romanians, I said, "Hey, do you think your dad could get me a press pass?" And she said, "Oh, let me ask." And then he he just said, "Yeah, I'll get your friend a press pass." And so I was like next to the mat, able to take photos of these famous gymnasts, and I'm sure the AP guys were going, "Who the hell is this kid?" How did he get a press pass?
Because what at that time you were what in high school or college?
I was in college. Yeah.
Do you remember what you were shooting with those photos we just showed the gymnast sort
Oh,
of?
that was a Canon F1, and it was Tri-X, and I was probably pushing either to 16 or 32.
Did you ever
HC 110 dilution B. That's my soup.
That's hilarious.
You can never forget.
Yeah, yeah. When you're a product guy, you got to know what you're. Was pursuing photography? Did you ever think you wanted to pursue shooting as a career? Like, how did you? What did you end up majoring in college?
Uh, that's an interesting question because my dad really, uh, you know, there was a turning point after City College. My 2 years done. I I basically he said, "Hey, do you think you'd want to go into photography full time?" He goes, "Hey, there's this school in Santa Barbara, Brooks Institute, and maybe you'd want to go there and take up photography." And I was a little bit scared of that. I mean, he was an accountant, and he
Hmm.
always was like driving me to that. You should be an accountant, and
Yeah.
and I was always interested in money.
Who's not?
But so I ended up thinking that, well, I'll study business. And then if I want to have photography, I'll have that business side of me. And then I'll be able to, learn the skill. So I ended up transferring to the University of Washington and got into their business school, studied marketing and finance, um, and then happened to, you know, apply to Kodak, and the rest is history.
I saw on your Instagram. I'll post it. I'll edit it into this video. And
Oh,
you have your letter that you wrote, I think
oh,
in like 1972 when you were like applying for a job. It's
yeah.
amazing. You have it on your Instagram. People can go check it out. Was Kodak, was that like the dream to work for them? Or like, did you, obviously you were going to school for business, but did you know you wanted to work in the photo industry too, or the photo industry too, or did that this kind of come?
No, so at Odegaard University, at the undergraduate library, they had a wall that showed student artwork or student work.
Mhm.
So I had a portfolio of photographs that I had taken, and I just brought my pictures in to the administration. I said, "Hey, I'm an amateur photographer. Do you think I could, put my prints up?" So they said yeah, and I had like a one person show at the undergraduate library, and one of my business professors saw the work and he saw me at class and he goes, "Hey, I saw your show at the library. You should work for Kodak." And I go, "Really? I wonder what jobs Kodak has." And he kind of laughed and he goes, "Well, they're a big company. They have to be able to get products to market, and there's probably people that do that." And I go, "Oh."
A lot of jobs.
And then I happened to find out of a friend who had a summer job uh, demonstrating the instant camera at the time, and that was the color burst camera. and and so I applied for that job for an internship. And what happened is that instant camera was so successful, they wrote me back and they said, "Sorry, we're no longer having internships. We are hiring people to do demonstrations and to sell that product because it was so successful." And but at the end of that sentence, that letter, they said, "But keep on sending your resume and keep on asking us if there are jobs available."
Hmm.
And so just a hint to the it's different applying to jobs today, but in I'd end up like I was on the West Coast. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I'd call the business and technical personnel in Rochester at 8 a.m. And so the recruiter would say, "Gee, isn't it early there?" And I said, "Yeah, it's 5 a.m., but I wanted to talk to you and reach you early in your day if you could answer my questions." And he goes, "Well, that's, quite a bit of dedication, thank you and for your call, and keep on calling. We don't have anything right now." Um, it paid off probably a year, maybe 6 months to a year later, when my roommate picked up the call and they had asked me to call them, and they had told me that they want me to go to Rochester to interview, for a job. Um, I was so naive that I told them that I didn't have any money to go to Rochester for an interview, and they said, "Oh no, we'll fly you out and reimburse you for all your costs to do so."
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I and I said, "Wow," and I told my dad, and my dad said, "Really? Oh, you got to be kidding! They would really do that?" And I said, "Yeah, they said they'd reimburse me for this for the cost." So it was great. Ended up going to Rochester, interviewing with about 7 or 8 people, and then they had offered me a job at the end of the day.
That's what do you remember about that first trip to Rochester? I went to college in Rochester, so
Oh,
um, a lot of experience there. But like, what do you remember about that first trip to Rochester? Like, did you get to see the factory where they made the film or anything, or was it just kind of this straight interview? Or what do you kind of
it,
remember
it,
about that first trip?
yeah, no, it was a first. I remember that flying from Seattle had to go through Chicago, and there was a delay. And so I didn't get into my hotel till like 1 o'clock. And so, by going east, that I had to wake up, to be at the, at Kodak office
Hmm.
at 8 a.m. And so, I didn't get any sleep because,
And you got the nerves to go into the big interview.
and it was like waking up at 5 a.m., and it was just like, oh, just get me through this, with adrenaline.
Mm.
Um, but it was a short trip. There wasn't a tour. It was like fly in, come in, go through this series of interviews uh, from all the product managers to the national sales manager. It was pretty nerve-wracking to think that you would see this whole talk to this whole level of individuals. And then, at the end of the day, they'd say, "Okay, like, wait, wait in the waiting room."
uh,
And they finally called you in, and the interviewer said, "Hey, we'd like to make you an offer."
That's awesome. Yeah, what was your first role when you got the job at Kodak? What were you doing?
Well, the I was trained to be a technical sales representative,
Mhm.
but my early route into Kodak was to be assigned in the photographic technology division. And this building in Kodak Park was basically where all the research and development, practical research and development for film and paper and equipment um, was being developed. So all the film was developed, it was designed for the C41 process. All the paper was being designed for the paper process. And then there was the equipment, all that, everything had to be printed. So all the equipment had to be color balanced and timed for the printing of negatives onto paper. It was an amazing assignment because they allowed me this access to all the development teams, whether it was all the color films, all the black and white films, um, color paper, color paper and chemicals. But the first group I had gone into it was called the EP2 process group. EP2 was the precursor to RA4.
Mhm.
And so when I joined Kodak, it was a secret project called P149. It was a P project, and what they were doing is they were changing the emulsion of paper from a bromide, silver bromide, to silver chloride. What that did was double the productivity of the paper process. So instead of, let's say, a processing machine taking that paper and processing 27 feet a minute, it doubled the rate to 54 feet a minute.
Wow.
So it increased the productivity of the labs in that day by 2x. It was interesting to be a part of a development project like that.
And were you living and working in Rochester at
I
this
was
time?
Yeah, yeah. And in those days, the training in Rochester was a minimum a year as a TSR. So during that year, they would teach you how to use and sell every product in the uh, picture making, picture professional markets. Because I was being trained to call on professional labs, photo finishing labs, and the photographer as a technical sales representative in that day. So that's why the training was so comprehensive. They had this building called the Marketing Education Center that trained all the sales reps across all the product lines that Kodak sold in the day. And when I joined Kodak, the uh, the amount of employees was probably 130, 140,000 employees worldwide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found this picture on your Instagram. It was you made it in the 1980 annual report. Uh
So
and in the on the Instagram post it said that year you guys did like 9.7 billion dollars in sales or something at that time in 1980.
if
It's
you could imagine the that machine that I'm in front of is uh, is a quality control machine, and all that did was take data and create the processing charts for in that case I was reading color paper, and so the the floppy disks, it was a dual floppy disk reader, and those floppy disks were, I think, 13-inch square. So there's two two floppy disk readers in that big machine, and I think the I think the memory in that thing. It's like 4x4.
And then this is state of the art. This is like
Yeah, it's state of the art, and I think the it was either 128 or 512K or something like that, which was like huge memory in those days.
so this photo is basically the training that you were doing in Rochester, and then you would essentially take the training you learned here, and then once you go out into the market and help, like you said, the labs and finishing labs, pretty much. Yeah.
Right, right. Now that particular quality control system was not for the faint of heart. It was probably, maybe 10, 15,000 dollars, or maybe it was a subscription. I can't remember, but it would be the large photo finishing labs that would do this, and the photo finishing labs that I would call on, uh, the smallest might do 10,000 rolls a day. But an Eckert's lab, when I transferred to Houston, was this regional lab that was vertically integrated. At Christmas time, they would peak to about 50, 60, 70,000 rolls of film a day.
Holy cow.
And that film would come in the afternoon, be processed all overnight, and then it would be packaged, cut and packaged, and then redistributed to the stores the next day.
So those would be like at that volume, they're doing like who are they processing film for? It's like the Walgreens and like those
Yeah,
type of retail stores, pretty much. At
well, yeah, in Eckert's was like probably a 15,000 store chain
Mhm.
across the Southeast in those days. So from Florida to, I was in Texas at the time, but the Technicolor lab in Honolulu would basically be doing processing for the Foodlands and the Long's Drugs um, but yeah, I mean they would be doing processing for the independents, and that's kind of how film processing was done for the masses. There was a route car that went to every food, drug, mass camera store, take that film, bring it in,
Mm.
and get it processed, printed, and redistributed every day.
That's incredible. Yeah, I never got to experience it. I wish I got to, but back in the day, I saw these photos and they had them all around the country. Like there'd be like a little hut, like in like a
Oh,
in a parking lot where you
yeah.
basically you'd probably go. I think you drop off your film, pick up your prints, but it was like basically in the parking lot of a shopping center, and they had all those things like around the country, pretty much.
Well, that was a photomat system where they had these huts where they collected film and sold film.
Hmm.
But every store had a photo department for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was how things were done those days.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I think I saw you ended up working in Hawaii for a while. What were you doing out there, and like how's that experience?
The working in Hawaii was my first assignment. So when they when I graduated, there weren't territories, and they were trying to figure out where to send me. Since I recently had um, graduated from the University of Washington, I wanted to go back to Seattle because I love the Pacific Northwest, and so they said, "Oh, Tim, we decided we're gonna send you to Hawaii." And most people would say, "Oh, that's great." And I was like thinking, "Why are you sending me so far away?" I had no vision of what Hawaii was, right? It's like you're gonna send me to Hawaii. I mean, I know I have family in Hawaii, but it
Mhm.
was just like, hmm, can't you just send me to Seattle? But Hawaii was great because again, I was in the middle. I was so remote, but I was calling on the professional lab, the photo finishing lab, and the photographer in the Hawaii market. And um, it was it was really an amazing experience because it was, I mean, it was hard work too, because what I would end up doing when I talked to you about the labs working all night, I would call on a photo finishing lab that was doing its work um, at night. And sometimes I'd just stay up till 2 a.m. in order to call our technical people in Rochester
Hmm.
at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
So, because there was that 6 hour time difference. So that's one of the things that was challenging for me is that I did work pretty hard in those days, just trying to cover the markets because you had these photographers and professional labs that worked during the day, and of course you had the photo finishing plant that worked at night. So I you could end up like working, uh, really hard, and that was my experience. Most people said, "Oh, it must have been, cool, living in Hawaii, having Mai Tais," and it was anything but that. It was work. Most of the executives, when they'd come over, they'd, be on expenses.
Yeah.
They'd, be in the hotel, and they'd say, "Oh, you must really like, living in Hawaii. It's so beautiful." And it's like going, "Dude, we're working, and when we're home, you gotta mow the lawn and clean up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just
It-
yeah, you're just
yeah,
running around putting out fires, trying to figure stuff out. Because like what did kind of typical day look like? What were you kind of working on? What were kind of like because you said you would work with photographers directly too.
right. But many times it'd be working with photographers, with wedding photographers, talking about, the film, its reproductive qualities, how to expose it, pretty much similar to what was today, except the photographers in those days, if they were a big wedding photographer, they could be buying 50,000, 100,000, $200,000 in film because everything had to be, shot and printed. And there was just a tremendous amount of film being shot in those days. Hawaii was probably as large as some countries were in terms of volume, just because even though there's only like 1 million residents in Hawaii,
Yeah.
there are about 8 million visitors.
Yeah,
So
tourist.
all those visitors came in, took photos, and bought film and had it processed in some cases. And so the film volume was just tremendous in those days. I think one of the things, as far as experience goes, is that over the 18 years that I was in Hawaii, I, with all the shakeups in the organizations, I um, called on the food, the drug, the mass retail, as well as the 1 hour photo lab, the photographer. And so the the broad experience that I had, I essentially was a generalist for Kodak products and systems over the 18 years I was in Hawaii. And I think that that helped me when they transferred me to the mainland
Mm.
to absorb or do anything that management asked me um, as time went on. So one of the things that um, I was, well, and I always accepted whatever task I was assigned. So if a manager said, "Hey, we know that you cover LA, but the person in San Diego left. Can you take care of San Diego?" The San Francisco guy left, or gal left. Can you take care of San Francisco? How about Oregon and Washington? How about Mississippi West? And how about Canada? So on and on, as there were reductions in force, I was able to absorb more and more territory and responsibility. And I think that over time, I became responsible for the U.S. and Canada, and as a result, the guy that had the smallest territory in Hawaii inherited the earth, and the rest is
So,
history.
so yeah, that's a good piece of advice right there. Just say yes and then figure it out after. Pretty much,
Yeah.
just yeah. When you get opportunity comes your way, just kind of take it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like in those days? What was kind of the favorite part of your job, you think, when you're kind of starting out there?
Oh, the it always went uh back to shooting. Oh, so I always had like the travel leisure. The travel leisure, for Hawaii is like taking care of the hula show. I was responsible for uh, the overseeing of the Kodak hula show at Kapiolani Park for for a bit. I also called on the nightclub photographers, and that would be as if, let's say, Don Ho, the famous Don Ho, you would go to his show. They'd take there'd be a photographer. They'd take a picture of you, and then they'd come back in an hour and say, "Hey, here's a picture of you at at the Don Ho show. Would you like to buy it?" And so it was calling on those spec labs, and so called on the helicopter companies, um, all the any tour company that was selling film or making pictures, I'd be calling on. So one of the benefits of that is that they go, "Oh, Tim, do you want to go on a helicopter ride? Uh, oh, your mom and dad are coming to Hawaii. You think they'd want to go to a hula show?"
Yeah.
So it was those kinds of things that were kind of cool for sure. And then when my management came around, uh, I would I would usually take them. I'd say, you know what? Before we go call on customers, what I'd like to do is I'd like to you know take you on a tour of a different perspective of our market. And so I'd get them in the car. I wouldn't tell them where we were going, and we'd end up going to an airport. And he goes, "Why are you taking us to an airport?" And then there'd be this helicopter company that it might be selling film,
Hmm.
but I told them I was going to take my boss, and could we, go on a tour? And they say, "Oh, of course, that'd be great." And so he goes, "You're going to take me on a helicopter ride?" And I go, "Yeah, this is the different perspective. I want you to see what this island looks like." And so that was, he goes, "Well, gee, Tim, no rep has ever done that for me before."
Usually in the rental car instead you're in the helicopter.
Yeah, in the helicopter, and then I'd say, "See, that complex, that shopping complex has the long store that we're going to go see." And that, you know,
And when you say like calling on customers, is that like, was part of your job trying to find new customers, or is it just trying to show them new products and that kind of thing? Or like when you say calling a customer, what does that kind of entail for your job, I guess?
so calling on customers would be trying to incent them it was more than just like having them reorder, because much of the time there were many more of us in those calling on customers with 100 with 10 billion, $9 billion in film going out there. Much of the job was, personal relationships and getting in there and saying, "Hey, let me look at your inventory. Well, you don't have any of our cameras, you don't have any of our batteries, you don't, and oh, what about this SKU?" So it's really selling in the really direct selling, saying, "Hey, there's so many products that we have in our bag." And of course, there was Canon, and there was Nikon and Olympus. So, we were selling our consumer cameras, but Olympus was selling their Muji, and and so there were so many different products, and this market was growing so much. Um, it was really going in and selling.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
asking for the sale. It was really more of a direct sales thing.
is that something you were always comfortable with, like dealing with people and doing sales and um, any advice you'd give to someone? Because I think even for freelance photographers listening, that's a big part of the job. Like getting assignments or getting work, it's like you got to be able to talk about your work and try to sell it to the client or customer or whoever it is. Like, were you always comfortable with it? And like, what do you kind of learn in all your years of this kind of doing sales, I guess?
No, sales and public speaking and just organizing your thoughts you know, takes work. I know I have to say that probably becoming a yearbook photographer was the first step of getting out of my shell, because when you're given an assignment, you have to tell people how to pose, how to get in the group. You gotta circle the wagons to get people, organized for their photo.
Hmm.
And so I think that was really helped me, get out of my shy side, because certainly, um, you know, being comfortable speaking or being in your own skin, wasn't, first on my list for sure. It takes practice and it takes time. And if you need the photo, you need to ask, otherwise you're not going to get it. So I think that over time, so that was certainly my first step. And my second, one of the other jobs I had in college, I was a tour guide at Seattle City Lights Skagit project, which is a hydroelectric dam project. Um, so I was a tour guide for 2 summers, and there you had to learn a spiel about the tour. And it was a 4 hour tour, and you had megaphones because it was outdoors, and you were talking about, before you there's Ross Dam, and it's 1,180 feet across that crest
Yeah,
of that dam.
yeah.
And so to this day, you still have this, like, I could probably do part of that tour today, but it was a 4 hour tour that at the end it had a meal, a buffet meal of chicken and spaghetti, mashed potatoes and gravy, green beans, apple pie, and ice cream. So, so that was the other thing that took me into public speaking, where you had to get out there and uh, give tours. So that every every step of the way, when I think of preparing yourself to uh, talk to someone, it all has to do with the homework that you've done before. In Kodak's training of a year, where they had product specialists, engineers, um, teach you the the components of a film, its characteristics, so that you can communicate that, to the person using that product. It was it's all that homework, all that training, that allows you to be able to be confident in speaking about the product you sell.
Yeah, definitely. I don't imagine you guys probably did like a lot of trade shows back in the day when that was like a real thing. I know there's
Yeah.
still WPPI is still around. Photo Plus, it's still around, but it's not what it used to be, I don't think. But like, was that a big part of your job too? This kind of doing the trade show circuit and just talking about the product?
Right. Photo Plus, WPPI, IUSA. It's called IUSA, but it was the Professional Photographers of America.
Hmm.
That was a big one. And then we would do workshops. Many of the famous photographers would have workshops. Some of the smaller ones that I have done today are John Sexton's Eastern Sierras workshop, um, where he has maybe 10 to 15 photographers. Most of the time, they're large format photographers. go out into the Eastern Sierras, Mono Lake, June Lake, Tiger Pass. It's really a nice benefit of, hanging around some of the amazing photographers.
And obviously, around early 2000s when digital started coming around, uh, what was that like working at Kodak? I'm sure you get asked about this. Like the industry changed so quick. Like when I was in college, '05 to '08, that's really when digital really started to
Mm.
kind of come about. What was that like internally at Kodak working there, when the digital revolution was coming, I guess?
The yeah, the digital cameras, I mean, it was kind of um I want to say it was a little I can't remember that much about what was going on. Because when you're on the ground floor selling, you
Hmm.
really didn't the management was probably, you know, being beat up, so to speak, or strategizing what the real issue is. The What we were doing is we were just I mean, I must have been in Hawaii, fat, dumb, and happy, just just going, what's the problem? We're selling a bunch of film. Although, 23 years ago, so that was 2002, when essentially, yeah, 2001, 2002 is when we closed the warehouse in Hawaii, and that's when I transferred to the mainland here. So we knew the market was declining, but in some ways, when I was looking at my territory, I, I, I was responsible for paper, chemicals, and film. So when there's when there's an ebb and flow of business, but the whole category, seems pretty big, you kind of go, gee, what's the problem? But
Yeah.
but, but when there's a bigger picture, and there's the cost of a distribution center, and there's the cost of the infrastructure and the people, and then you really, the overall sales are going down, then that's when they started reducing the footprint of distribution centers, of manufacturing. Um, Somebody definitely, saw that. I didn't see any of that, because when I was transferred here to LA, I was supposed to be a key account manager, calling on, a half a dozen customers. Um, and then all of a sudden, with reorganizations, as I said, it was just accumulating more territory. You'd end up going, well, okay, you know, now that you're here, uh, we know we said you'd have this responsibility. Well, now we're going to expand it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, what was the conversation amongst your colleagues? Like, did you guys think film was just gonna die? Like, I feel like right now, talking to photographers, I think it's a similar thing with AI and stuff. I don't know if it's the
Mm,
same, but like, it's the same sense of like panic. Like, even remember
mm,
when I oh 08, 05, '08, there was a photographer, digital camera, and they're like, oh, the career, you can't have a career anymore. It's just gonna be done. Like,
mm,
what was there like a sense of panic amongst like colleagues and stuff? Like, they think film was just gonna die out, or what were people talking about? Do you remember?
mm, mm. The the that's really a good question, because when I think about my ever expanding, I don't think I was ever on
Yeah.
uh that side, just because I'd always been surviving.
Hmm.
So so the so I knew that there was like downsizing going on, and I was always like concerned, oh, I wonder, if my job would ever be affected. And I was never you know, although worried, I think we were trying to just talk to each other, like, what's going on, because we were not part of this strategy. We were like the
Yeah,
sale. you
Yeah,
know,
you're just focused, doing your job, doing
yeah.
your thing, and this. Yeah, I get it.
And then all of a sudden, you kind of go, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
So and so is no longer there.
Hmm.
And so I don't remember ever talking about film going away. Well, maybe when Kodak went bankrupt in 2012,
Yep.
and that okay. Now then, let me go.
I
Let
and
me
I
get my
wanted to I
memory.
want to state I'm not trying to be negative, but I think it
Yeah,
is interesting point of like we've
yeah,
lived through this evolution of like film to
yeah,
digital, and that's kind of wanted to touch on it, you know?
yeah. AI is something that is probably something more top of mind
Hmm.
for people in like working because of the concern of
Yeah.
taking over an image or making a small change in an image and saying, "Oh, that's mine." I mean, I think I've seen that kind of commentary,
Yeah.
but where I lie is just where film, the enthusiasm and the passion for uh, shooting film is still relevant in terms of creating one's own art. So I don't see where that has become how that would affect a film image or an image where someone is generating of content for, let's say, their Instagram
Yeah.
or hobby. Um, and I'm not sure whether, you know, it would take over like a wedding photographer's work because the wedding photographer's work is still creating content, uh, a memory for the bride and groom.
And wedding seems like one of those markets that's they've held on to film, I feel like longer than anyone. Even when
Yeah.
like digital, it seems like the wedding market has there's always been like like a need for that, and like people like that. And I know a lot of wedding photographers have always just kind of stuck with film pretty much.
I think also it differentiates the wedding photographer uh, to show that they have this artful way of capturing the event that digital still, well, it can do with maybe presets or some work, but it's not, I guess it's not the same as showing this particular camera skill with their maybe their Contact 645 in order to show a differentiation so they could price themselves in a certain way. I mean, I think that the the client, the couple that are hiring a photographer can see, well, if you're gonna shoot, a digital camera and give me 3 to 5 thousand images, that that uh, shopping enough that gives you a certain price. But if you come up and say, hey, I'm going to be shooting film and and you want this and this is the work I do, then that can command a little bit higher price because they know that film costs money and processing, and the photographer explains that, so they know that there is going to be an associated cost for that. So I think that helps with differentiating the photographer, the wedding photographer in that case.
Yeah. And when did you kind of start noticing it? Because there is seem like there's been a resurgence in film photography over the last, I don't know, 5, 8 years. Is that something you started to notice? Because I think even Kodak in the last 6 months, I read an article that they updated their manufacturing facility to help make more film. Like, when did you started noticing that films was kind of getting popular again?
Probably 10 years ago, in around 2015, the business started growing, uh, and it continued to grow at a relative double digit pace from 2015. And during COVID in 2020, there was a counterbalance growth with 35 millimeter,
Mhm.
for me nearly doubling in volume, and but it was balanced by medium format film declining, and that's because of COVID, weddings were canceled, and then the brand shoots, Vanity Fair, Vogue, all those brand shoots were canceled because the teams couldn't travel. And so what happened in 2021 is all those canceled weddings were rescheduled and couples continued to get married. So medium format film essentially doubled uh, in 2021. And then 35 millimeter continued to grow. So 2021 was really a major turning point over and above what uh, was anticipated. And in addition, Fuji discontinued their 400H. So we ended up being the only 400 professional 400 speed film out in the marketplace. So so there were just a lot of factors, contributing to this huge growth in photography, film photography worldwide. But again, probably, two that 10 years ago
Yeah.
was when film started like ramping up
Yeah, it's
from.
exciting to see, and then like even Ektachrome came back because it was gone for a while, so it's kind of been
Mhm.
exciting. And even like it seems like there's other film on the market, not even just Kodak. Cine Still, that's like a popular thing now, which I think
Mhm.
I never understood. Cine Still has some relationship with Kodak, right? It's like a or no?
Yeah, no, Cinestill buys film from Kodak's motion picture um, business, and then they refinish it for their use. They take the remjet off the film, which is an anti-halation, anti-static material, because motion picture film, it needs that because the film is running through the camera's 24 frames a second. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. So it's cool to see all the different films on the market. What are your favorite films over the years, even ones that are discontinued, like your Kodak films? What are your favorites over the years? I got mine. E100 VS was my favorite, no longer around, but uh,
No, the ectochromes for sure. I mean, there were so many varieties, but for the most part, the favorite films that I continue to shoot are the portrait series, the 160, 400, and 800. I mean, 800 is really a beautiful film um, that that I really enjoy shooting. The I want to say the precursor to Ektar um, was Royal Gold, which was a fine grain film. But today, Ektar is the finest grain film we make, and it's got all the fine grain and color attributes that Royal Gold, had. Uh, so I, it's hard to say where we could improve some of the films because the film technology or the emulsion making uh, would be so it wouldn't be evolutionary. It would just be incrementally improved. And so to spend the uh, money to improve a film today, um, when the superlatives are already there, if T-Max 100 is the finest grained black and white film in the world today at that speed, or if T-Max 400 is the finest grain, or T-Max 100 is the sharpest grain. So it's really difficult to make an improvement to T-Max 100 when it's already the sharpest.
yeah, but Tri-X is already perfect. You don't need to
Right.
mess up the recipe.
No, 70 years of goodness. So it's really it's really hard to change something like Tri-X, because if you do and you lose some of the personality or the characteristics that people love about it, then you've basically, put too much salt in the soup.
Yeah, exactly. And with Portra, because back in the day when I was starting out, there was Portra
Yeah,
NC and then VC, and now it's just Portra. Like,
right.
what's the difference to Portra you get today versus like back when you had the two different options? Like, how do you explain it, I guess, these days?
Yeah, I want to say that when there was Portra, NC, and VC, you had you had it in every um, product category. So when film started to decline, you made the retailer had to carry two SKUs
Hmm.
versus one, and ultimately, as the business started declining, you'd end up having film go out of date. And so the and so when the volumes were going down, you were trying, and we knew that Photoshop was gaining popularity. So we knew that um, contrast could be uh, manipulated in a scan via Photoshop or the equipment out there reproducing the image. So as a result, when we reformulated Portra, we reformulated more on the neutral, less we less of the V and
Yeah,
more of
yeah, yeah. You,
the
you can mess with it in post.
yeah.
You can make it whatever you want, pretty
Right.
much. Yeah, yeah.
So if you could come with like a neutral color, a neutral contrast, no, a normal contrast, then if you really wanted to boost contrast, you could do it in post. So it'd be more difficult to go on the higher end and try to bring it down in terms of contrast. So that's why VC had to go, because we knew that contrast could always be improved via the scan or the equipment.
Mm. And I had to ask, with everything going on, I
Yeah.
saw you respond to some people on Threads, I think, the other day about obviously with the tariffs going on. Uh, are you think is that going to affect Kodak prices, you think, or anything you've heard so far?
What I say? Did I say something?
No, nah, you said I saw you were spending on someone on Threads. I think you said that it shouldn't affect because I mean the film's made in the
Well,
US, but
made in the U.S. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I should have probably stayed out of that.
No
But
promises.
top of mind is like, yeah, uh, manufacturing is all in the U.S. And so the only impact might be as if retaliatory tariffs, but
Yeah.
uh,
And
you know,
and then in terms of like pricing, I'm sure you get asked about all the time because you see like it's getting more popular, people are shooting more film, but then people are always it's like the prices are high. Like how do you kind of explain that to the consumer of like why film prices are so high and like do you think they'll ever go down or it's just kind of gonna go up? Like how do you kind of view it?
well, I think one of the things that where it was uh, unfortunate out of COVID was short supply, and I think what happened was is that when we were selling film and there was short supply, um, there were some of our customers we would allocate product, and I told some of our dealers, we allocate product to you, you should allocate product to your customer. And they go, well, we don't know who that customer is. And I said, well, you could limit the purchase. I don't know. And sometimes when people have like an online um, uh, capability in their stores, they probably would have been better off allocating more film to the store versus their online operation, where somebody could go into their uh, uh, checkout and put, oh, I want 100 rolls because I see it.
Hmm.
I think that was therein lies some of the were opportunists who bought all of somebody's store's product and then they resold it on Amazon or eBay or their Etsy store or something and charged, 2x for what it was. I mean, when when a box of Portrait 400 was, 60 or $75, there were those that were trying to sell it for 150 because it wasn't available anywhere else or they couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So I think in those cases that elevated the cost of film artificially just because there was a shortage. Um, Today, um, I want to say there's more supply, and I think that's kept prices relatively down because Kodak, as you say, they've improved their operations, finishing operations, so that they can make more film, finish more film. Making the film isn't it's difficult. It's magic and it's science, but to make a master roll 54 inches by 8 to 12,000 feet is, they can do that all day. It's the finishing operation, it's the slitting, it's the perfing of the film and getting them into cassettes that takes all the time. Um, Something for your viewers is that the I want to say it, a little bit of trivia. The perfing machine, when it perfs the film, it perfs at 384,000 perfs per minute.
Wow.
It sounds like when it's speeding up, it sounds like a jet engine as it's gaining speed, and they have these like two vacuum tubes that are vacuuming the perfs into a big Gaylord, a 4x4 cardboard Gaylord, and that fills that up. Um,
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Um, I guess, what do you think kept you interested? Like, I don't know too many people that spend over 40 years with one company. Like, what do you think kept you interested in, like, what are you most proud of over your course of your career, spending over 40 years in the photo industry, I guess?
yeah, wow, that brings some warm memories. I think because I started. Not everybody who works for Kodak uh, loves photography. It started in maybe they started in photography,
Yeah.
but I mean they studied finance or they were
Yeah, it's a job.
chemical engineers, um, and so it's just I think it's just my love for photography and being trained in so many aspects of of this of this company, having nearly every job as a field representative that I could have had uh, in terms of responsibility, sales responsibility, exposure to every market and channel. It's I guess it's just being a lifelong learner within this photography trade umbrella that has been just been amazing for sure. Um, that yeah, the interest has always been the love of the product that I sell, believing in the product that I sold and using it over the course of a lifetime of uh, yeah. So and I think I the proudest moment is I told my kids is that I never would have dreamt that a 22-year-old Japanese American kid in 1979 would end up managing the Kodak film business
Yeah.
46 years later. I mean that if you were to say, Tim, you just joined Kodak. You, do you think you'd ever be like managing this business, at the end of your career? And I'd say, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. Let's go drinking. You're a fairy tale town, man. What do you got? What are you talking about? That's never going to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible. I think it goes back to what you're saying before. It's just like you just said yes and you figured it out and you just kind of kept building, which is really great, man. And it's cool. Like I love seeing on Instagram. You still have fun with photography. I saw you did a workshop with John Sexton, I think out in Yosemite back in the fall. So
Yeah.
you're still out there shooting. Is there any photographic goals or anything you want to photograph moving forward, do you think? Anything bucket list stuff?
Well, I've got so much content because I've done some stylized shoot. It's wedding. Hybrid Co is another wedding and family workshop that I've gone to. The Society of Photographic Educators has always been a a, a conference that I love just because it's all the art schools and it's the students that come by the table and I love there's nothing more satisfying than giving a student a handful of film, especially when they're say alms for the poor, alms for the poor. I'm such a poor student. Could you give me some film for my project? I, I'm finishing trying to finish up for the year.
My favorite, there you have like a GIF on your Instagram, and it's two guys holding you upside down, shaking you to get the film out of your pockets.
Yeah. That was they said, Tim, you're known for giving out film. Let let's do this real. And they said, okay, you were a gymnast, do a handstand, so
Yeah.
they shook film out of me. So that was really pretty funny for sure.
Yeah. But Tim, man, I just want to thank you so much for taking time to do this, but also this your contribution to the photo community over the decades.
Oh, thanks, Alex.
You've definitely like just helped out a lot of people. So can't thank you enough, man.
So there you have it. That was the Tim Ryugo interview. Just want to thank Tim so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It was a real pleasure talking about his journey with photography and working with such an iconic brand like Kodak. I know I learned a lot and really appreciated kind of hearing his journey with photography. So can't thank him enough. You can follow Tim on Instagram at Tim Ryugo _ Kodak Professional. I'll put his link in the description, but definitely go give him a follow. He's always doing cool stuff. And like I said, he's just been a big part of the photo community across the country and has helped out a lot of photographers over the years. So just a really good guy, and glad I got a chance to speak with him. And as I mentioned with today's episode, if you use the promo code BANTER, you'll get 2 months free of the PicDrop image transfer tool. All you got to do is go over to picdrop.com, enter the promo code BANTER, and you get 2 months free. So definitely go give it a try and let me know what you guys think. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you aren't already subscribed to the Photo Banter YouTube channel, if you could just go hit the subscribe button, it'd be much appreciated. It's kind of helping me produce more videos and podcasts and much, much more. But as always, thanks so much for listening and take care.